So House Democrats finally have the power to make their impeachment dreams come true. But my first guest knows what that means, and he's got a little warning for them. We welcome the author of Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation, former independent counsel, Judge Ken Starr. Judge, thank you very much for being with us, and I want to get right to it. We're seeing a lot of parallels between what happened back in the 90s when you were the independent counsel. Now we have an independent counsel, Bob Mueller, who's investigating Donald Trump. Do you sometimes read the news and watch what's going on and say, oh boy, they have no idea what they're getting into?
And also a Yogi Berra moment or two, deja vu all over again. And you're so right, Governor, I will say this, for the sake of the country, and really for the sake, from their perspective, of their own political party, don't do it. Impeachment was meant by the founding generation to be reserved for what? Treason, bribery, and high crimes and misdemeanors. So maybe we'll get into that. But with the requirement of a 2/3 majority in the United States Senate, unless facts come out that we're not anticipating, we don't know it at all, it will depend, of course. We can't be absolute about it. But given what we now know, it would really be folly politically, but that's for others to say. But I will say this, it will be very bad for the country, as a country, the United States of America, to march down impeachment alley.
Some people are going to be surprised that you said that, but having read your book, which, by the way, cost me a great deal of sleep because I could not stop reading it, so I'm a little resentful.
I'm so sorry.
But I was somewhat surprised when you said in your book that you thought that having removed Bill Clinton from office would have been a grave, grave error, and that you were not in favor of that. And I think many people will say, but you were the independent counsel.
Yeah. Now you say that,
yeah.
Right? That's what I hear. What happened? Did you have a road to Damascus experience? Did you have an epiphany? Although my friends on the other side of the aisle don't really know what that is. So in any event, what either of those are or is. Sorry, I went to Sam Houston High School, so I might get my grammar wrong every now and then. So, Governor, in all seriousness, and part of this is the benefit of reflection, but let me make one factual statement. Congress in 1978 put a thumb on the scales in favor of impeachment by passing the independent counsel law. And in that independent counsel law, under which I was appointed, unlike Bob Mueller, I was required to report to the House of Representatives whenever, here are the magic words, substantial and credible information that we had, that an impeachable offense, left undefined, may have been committed. So you don't have to go to law school to say, boy, that's not very much. And so we were required to submit to the House of Representatives what we did. Happily, that has been taken away. But I come back to the fundamental point. For those 21 years when we had that statute in which Judge Walsh was appointed, Iran-Contra, I was appointed, Whitewater-Lewinsky, there was a congressional thumb on the scales or an arrow pointing in favor of going down impeachment row. We've taken that away because impeachment is just bad for the country. Unless there's a genuine consensus, treason, right, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. And now we know, by virtue of the experience, that the country could not come together on what was proven, namely perjury and obstruction of justice. So even committing serious crimes, serious felonies, is not enough to remove a president from office. So what we could have had, and I think it would have spared the country a lot, if we could have had wise people coming together and to say, let's find a lesser included sanction, such as a resolution of censure.
I've always wondered why the Republicans didn't just say, we don't want to participate in any type of action against a Democrat president. We leave it to our Democrat brothers and sisters to make the decision, and we will live with whatever it was. If they had gone too light, it would have been difficult for them. If they'd have gone heavy, the president would have been forever angry at them. But they would have been at least out of the notion of being partisan in the midst of that.
Right.
One of the things that I found very refreshing about the book is the candor. It's raw, it's very real, you don't hide anything. Your assessment, and it's a very different assessment of Bill and Hillary, are crystal clear in this book. Share with us what you saw as the fundamental difference between these two personalities that a lot of people may have thought were so similar, but really are not.
Yes. Well, for one thing, as we all have seen over the years, Bill is Mr. Empathy, affable, and so forth, but he is extremely ruthless, but he uses others to carry out the ruthlessness of his approach. Hillary will come directly at you and will challenge you and stick the dagger in your heart as opposed to in your back. She has such a different personality. It is not a winsome personality. It is not a charming personality. And Governor, you would have seen this, but I heard many stories in Arkansas of, we know Bill, we know what he does and so forth, but that's just Bill. But Hillary, on the other hand, and maybe part of it, Governor, was cultural, right? She wasn't from Arkansas, a little bit of the Wellesley East Coast approach, but I think it really boiled down to her personality, how empathetic she was, and she's a very different person. It doesn't surprise me, frankly, that someone who should have been virtually a walk-in to the Oval Office ended up falling short, and part of it wasn't just political naivete, it was just, I think it was the personality.
One of the surprises out of the book for me, and I did not know this before, that Rod Rosenstein was a member of the prosecution team that prosecuted Jim Guy Tucker, and that successful prosecution and his ultimate resignation catapulted me from the office of lieutenant governor into governor. I had no idea that I might have this distant relationship to Mr. Rosenstein. I was not aware that he was a part of that team. I knew of Hickman Ewing, Ray John, and a lot of the people that were there. I knew of them. Obviously, I didn't know them personally. So as you look now, 20 some odd years later, I think 22 years later, what do you see going on at the FBI and the Justice Department that concerns you? Is there anything that concerns you?
A lot concerns me about the FBI. First, I thought that the firing of Jim Comey was meritorious. It was overdue. I wish the president hadn't done himself such tremendous harm by relating it to the Russia investigation. But that's a different issue. And when I read Rod Rosenstein's memorandum in mid-May, not long before the firing and then the appointment of Special Counsel Bob Mueller, I said, Rod, who I do know well, I don't maintain close ties to him, but I have very high regard for Rod Rosenstein's integrity. And I know he's taken a lot of hits, including from some of my friends. It's just the way Washington, D.C. is, judgment calls and so forth. But he is as honest as the day is long. And that memorandum that he shared with the Attorney General, which was then shared with the President of the United States, is just rock solid, right in terms of why Jim Comey needed to go. So it began with Jim Comey, but now we know Andrew McCabe, the deputy who then became the acting director of the FBI, there are just some serious issues that have apparently even been referred to the criminal division for possible criminal prosecution. Of course, we don't want to hear any more of the names, so I'll be very brief, of Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. How did all these people come into leadership? Every apple, what should I say, every barrel might have a bad apple or two, especially as broad and large as the FBI is. But Governor, the FBI is a wonderful organization. You've dealt with them, men and women of integrity, the leaders who I knew, the Judge Bill Websters, the Judge Louis Freehs, and so forth, during my long experience of dealing with the FBI professionally day in and day out. These were honorable men leading honorable men and women. So something went awry. And then you have Bruce Orr in the Justice Department. And we need to know more about that, but in a senior leadership position. So something badly went wrong. And I would just call it the politicization of the FBI leadership, not the rank and file. And when you talk to rank and file agents, as you know, they are as appalled as you are, as morally outraged, because they gave their lives and careers to the bureau that stands for fidelity, bravery, and integrity, the FBI. So it's very upsetting to all of us who love the bureau to see this. There needs to be a house cleaning.
Well, and I hope there will be, because I do think it besmirches the reputation of the good men and women of the FBI and the Justice Department, who are not part of using their own political biases to go after people. I'm curious, this book was written almost 25 years after a lot of these events first started playing out. Was this therapeutic and cathartic for you to be able to sort of go back, reflect upon it, And did that distance of time give you the kind of ability to be far more candid than you might have been had you written this book 20 years ago?
Yes, I think I did. With respect to the last question, I think that the distance was helpful. Powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. I remember that the definition of poetry. So these were, this was definitely not poetry I was writing, but it was a story. It's a very human story about all of us who were caught up. Is ultimately a story about the country and our fundamental values of rule of law. And so I benefited from having the time to reflect and meditate on some of the text. For example, someone from your adopted city of Little Rock, Chief Judge Susan Weber Wright, held President Clinton in contempt of court. And it was that, in meditating on the text of her opinion, holding him in contempt, that gave rise to the name of the book. The book title, Contempt, sounds harsh, but it's simply grounded in the reality that our president, our then president, was the only president in American history to have been found in contempt by a federal district court. And when I say, well, a judge these days will do anything and everything, what does that mean? Yes, but there was no appeal. You could take that kind of judgment as the President of the United States to the Supreme Court of the United States, but there was no appeal whatsoever. So it was, in reflecting and meditating on what she had written and so forth, and I don't think I would have done that, 2 or 3 years after what had happened. It would have been raw, and I just wouldn't have had time to reflect on what had happened.
It is a remarkable book, and I want to tell you, I appreciate that even in dealing with the people that you had to prosecute, you saw them as human beings, not as targets. You treated them with dignity and respect, even when you had to deal with the dirty little secrets that they had created. And I hope everyone in America who is interested in the intrigues of politics will get your book and read it, because it offers some insights that I've not seen in any other book that I've read on politics, and believe me, I've read a few. So, Judge, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to ask our erstwhile announcer, Keith Bilbrey, to tell everybody where they can get Ken Starr's book. And I hope they will. They should.
Thanks, Mike. Believe me, you must read Ken Starr's book, Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. It's not just history. It's a page-turning cautionary tale for our current elected officials. It's available now at Amazon and at all major booksellers.
Watch Huckabee on Saturdays and again on Sundays at 8, 7 Central, only on TBN.